It's June 19th, 1999. We're in triple OT of Game 6 between the Buffalo Sabres and the Dallas Stars. And no matter how this series ends, it'll be historic solely on the fact that one of these two teams will win their first Stanley Cup. With Dallas pouring on the pressure, one of the game's best goal scorers has somehow found himself all alone in front against the greatest goalie in the world. This should be one of those memorable moments that fans talk about for years. But in reality, we're just seconds away from one of the most controversial moments in NHL history. Now, in order to understand the magnitude of this moment, let's go back to see how these two teams got here, as both teams had very different paths to the same destination. The Dallas Stars going against the Buffalo Sabres in the Cup Final was the definition of David versus Goliath. Heading into the 98-99 season, the Dallas Stars were coming off their first trip to the conference finals since they were the North Stars in 1991. They just had their two most successful regular seasons in the history of the franchise, led by head coach Ken Hitchcock. Now, to help Dallas in their quest for the Cup in this upcoming season was former St. Louis Blues all-world sniper and 3-time 70-goal scorer Brett Hull. Hull turned down bigger contracts from the Rangers and the Kings to come to Dallas, where he thought he'd have the best chance at winning his first cup. The Stars were the closest thing to Goliath all season. They were a high-flying offensive juggernaut that was littered with future Hall of Famers up and down the lineup. They racked up a whopping 236 goals and allowed an NHL low 168 and ran away with the President's Trophy. That's something they did in the previous year, but ultimately fell short when they met the Red Wings. With a team this stacked, the Stars began the playoffs on a mission. They started by sweeping Edmonton in the first round in a series where they allowed less than 2 goals per game. Of course, it wasn't without some controversy, as it included a 3-2 win in Game 3, where they benefited from 3 disallowed Oilers goals. One of those goals was called back due to the lovely foot in the crease rule, which I promise we'll get to later in the video. The Stars would advance to the second round and take care of St. Louis in 6 for the opportunity to meet the Colorado Avalanche in the conference finals. Now, the Avalanche just eliminated the 2-time Cup champions in the Detroit Red Wings, and they had a scary Hall of Fame team of their own. With the two teams splitting the first 4 games of the series, a crucial Game 5 in Dallas saw the Avs win 7-5 in the highest scoring game of the series. That was the most goals Dallas gave up all season, and it was extremely uncharacteristic from the defensive style that the Stars were known for. Facing the thought of their season ending in Game 6 of the conference finals for the second year in a row, Dallas put together one of their best games of the postseason, beating Patrick Waugh for 4 goals and outshooting the Avs by 13. Game 7 was a similar result, as the Stars needed just 25 shots to put another 4 past Waugh and punch their ticket to the Cup Finals. Awaiting them was the Buffalo Sabres, and they've had quite the journey to get to this point also. Buffalo didn't have the same star power up and down the roster. However, they played with a style of toughness and tenacity that was enough to make them a difficult team to play against. Even though they were third last in goals for amongst playoff teams, they were second in goals against thanks to strong defensive play and this man, Dominik Hasek. In the late 90s, the NHL was in the middle of the dead puck era, and goals were incredibly hard to come by. In 1997 and 1998, Hasek became the only goalie in NHL history to win back-to-back MVPs, and in 1999, he had better raw numbers than both of those seasons. With a 1.87 goals against and a .937 save percentage, beating Hasek was rare enough that if you did, you'd want to keep the puck if you scored on him. However, the Sabres as a whole had a roller coaster of a season. Stumbling out of the gate going 2-3-2, the Sabres caught fire when they went 17-3-3 to sit first in the East by mid-season. But in the new year, a combination of poor play and significant injuries, especially to Hasek, caused them to stumble into the playoffs as the 7th seed. And even though they would meet the 2nd seed Sens in round 1, Hasek was predictably a star, allowing just 6 goals all series with a ridiculous .963 save percentage. The Sabres swept the second-best team in the East, and in the second round, they would meet the Boston Bruins. After dropping Game 1, the Sabres would take 4 of the next 5 to beat the Bruins in 6 games. That set up a date in the conference finals with the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Leafs were the highest-scoring team in the 99 season, So when Buffalo got the bad news that Hasek would be ruled out of the first 2 games with a growing injury, things were looking bleak. But shockingly, Buffalo was fortunate to split the first 2 games with backup Dwayne Rollison, and when Hasek returned, he stopped 75 of 81 shots across games 3 to 5, and the Sabres advanced to the Cup Final for the first time in 24 years. The difference between these 2 teams was 23 points in the standings, but with them being number 1 and number 2 in goals against during the regular season, defense and goaltending would be the story, especially Eddie Belfour versus Dominik Hasek. This was Belfour's second time in the Cup Final. His first go-around was with the Chicago Blackhawks, and he came up short with a rookie Hasek as his backup. With both of these goalies at the top of their game, Hasek was on another level in Game 1, stopping 35 of 37 shots. And with this one requiring OT, Jason Woolley would be Buffalo's hero. With the Sabres having a 1-0 series lead, Game 2 would be another tightly contested game going down to the wire. Tied at 2s with just under 3 minutes left to go, Brett Hull would step up for Dallas.
From Lettinen, bent back,
Now that this series is all tied at 1, both teams flexed their strengths in games 3 and 4. Dallas imposed their suffocating defensive play onto Buffalo, and Belfour only had to face 12 shots in Game 3 to pick up the win. In Game 4, Dallas replicated that style, keeping Buffalo to 18 shots and 2 goals, but Hasek was otherworldly, stopping 30 of 31 to tie the series up yet again. Belfour and the Stars would respond with a 23-save shutout in Game 5 to bring us to this game, Game 6 in Buffalo. Despite how great Hasek has played throughout this series, Dallas still managed to beat him 11 times through 5 games. And early in Game 6, an uncharacteristic goal would find its way into the net.
Yuri Lettinen trying to turn. Shannon held him off. Puck score! The pass came out in front and trickled in off skates.
With a softie led in by Hasek, Buffalo had no choice but to shake it off. Both goalies traded save after save throughout the second period, but Stu Barnes would be the one to finally rip one past Belfour to tie the game up at 1.
Tied. Primo trying to move it in. Did. Shot. Score!
As time winded down during regulation with the score deadlocked at 1, this game would need sudden death overtime. A goal for Dallas, and they would win their franchise's first ever Stanley Cup, while a goal for Buffalo would force a Game 7 in the Cup Final for the first time in nearly half a decade. In the first OT, both offenses seemed tight. Buffalo got the first shot of the period nearly 8 minutes into play, while Dallas didn't get their first shot until a little over 7 minutes remaining. With the first OT solving nothing, the second overtime would see Buffalo inches away from forcing 7.
Winners as well.
Back to the point. Shot. Patrick Belfour.
Oh. Here in the second overtime period. Wham!
As time ticks on, the way these two goalies are playing feels like this game will never end. Heading into triple OT, Belfour had stopped 49 shots, while Hasek has stopped 42. One of these teams has to break through. And 15 minutes into this installment of the marathon, Dallas has their most dangerous weapons on the ice. Mike Modano, Yuri Lettinen, and Brett Hull. All these players have been extremely clutch for the Stars at different points during this run. But the one guy who has a special knack for these moments is Brett Hull. In St. Louis, Hull led the NHL in scoring, putting up absurd numbers from 1989 to 1992. But in recent years, injuries impacted his production, especially this season. Scoring at just over a point per game in the first half of the season, Hull ran into injury problems that saw him sidelined for a month before returning just before the playoffs. That was until he re-aggravated it in Game 3 of this series. He missed all of Game 4, played limited minutes in Game 5, and is doing the same here tonight despite finding himself on the ice in triple overtime. Now, with him in front of the net, all alone against the greatest goaltender on the planet, there's one other thing he has to worry about in this moment, and that's the goal crease rule. Let's rewind back to 1991. The NHL introduced the crease rule that basically stated that any attacking player being in the crease, whether or not they had anything to do with the play, would result in no goal. Fans despised the rule because right as offense was plummeting league-wide due to the clutch and grab and neutral zone trap, the league was taking goals off the board because players would have so much as a toe on the other side of the crease, with it having no actual impact on the play. One owner in particular who was outspoken about the rule in 1991 was the Dallas Stars owner, Norman Green. At the time, he owned the Minnesota North Stars, but he called the entire thing a mistake, and leading up to this moment in the Cup Finals, his Stars were no stranger to controversy surrounding this rule. In 1997, the Stars choked a 3-goal lead in Game 3 of the quarterfinals to Edmonton that was cemented by an OT winner from Kelly Buchberger. Except the Stars were furious when watching the replay of the goal, as the league had seemingly missed Mike Greer's foot cutting across the crease on the game winner.
Dallas players were screaming that Mike Greer of the Oilers was in the crease when the goal went in, thus negating the score. Imagine what happened after the game in the tunnel when they saw the replay and saw that they were right on target.
You better go. You got it. Bossy's in the crease.
If that incident wasn't enough, fast forward to these very same 99 playoffs, the Stars were on the other side of a Game 3 result that saw 3 goals get called back against the Oilers. That one goal that we showed earlier would have been the game-tying goal, and it was called back because of the very same rule. That brings us to this moment here. Triple OT with the Stanley Cup on the line with one of the game's deadliest shooters on the doorstep. This rule has altered games and stirred controversy around the league for years. The fact that this rule wasn't changed a long time ago was a huge mistake. The only thing that would make it a full-blown nightmare was if it were to happen on a cup-clinching goal.
By Hull, shot, Yari Lettman, Hull, loose puck, Hull, shot, score, the Dallas Stars, Brett Hull, they've won the Stanley Cup, deep in the heart of Texas, the Stars are shining.
The aftermath of this very goal was when the NHL knew that they made a huge mistake. Because although the team shook hands and the Stars hoisted the cup, many believed that the goal shouldn't have counted. When you watch the replay, it is very clear that Brett Hull's foot was in the crease while the puck went in. Yet the Stars are celebrating, it's 3 a.m., and it would be one hell of a disaster if they called this all back.
The Dallas Stars have no idea what is actually transpiring here. They're in the middle of their giant celebration.
So the rule that everyone complained of all year has come to haunt the National Hockey League at the worst possible moment.
The Sabres, on the other hand, refused to leave their locker room until given an explanation.
Rough, where none of the players are available until Brian Lewis comes down from the National Hockey League and explains to them this situation on why this goal should count. Stay tuned. I have the faintest clue what's going to happen at this point.
Sabres coach Lindy Ruff even had a run-in with Commissioner Gary Bettman, saying he just wanted an answer as to why this goal wasn't reviewed. And Bettman's lack of response only infuriated the Sabres even more.
On what basis did they try to explain to you that it was a good goal?
That Brett Hull had control of it, and he had it under control in the crease, and he stick handled to his forehand and shot it in. Well, that wasn't the case. It went off Dom's glove, it went off Holzinger's skate, went outside the crease, and his foot's in the crease when he scores the goal.
But there's also one more wrinkle to this story, because on March 25th, 1999, the NHL sent out a memo to all teams clarifying the skate in the crease rule. It stated that if a player controlled the puck, entered the crease, and scored, the goal would count. But if there was a change of possession and the player remained in the crease and then scored, the goal would be disallowed. That makes sense, except for some reason, the NHL didn't make the memo public knowledge at the time it was sent. Once the league spoke to the Sabres, the decision aligned with the wording of the memo. Even though Hull was in the crease, his initial shot rebounded off a Hasek and had not resulted in a change of possession. Hull kicks the puck with his left skate while still being outside the crease and into a shooting position. Because of that action, he became the possessor of the puck prior to his skate entering the crease. That means that the NHL determined it to be a good goal. In the end, it was a controversial ruling that was supported by a rule that the NHL should have changed years prior. And because of that very mistake, it created a moment that will forever be surrounded by controversy. The very next season, the NHL changed the rule entirely by allowing players to stand in the crease so long as the goalie wasn't interfered with. While goalie interference still remains one of the most controversial topics in today's NHL, this goal directly changed the rules of the sport, and likely for the better. For one team, it's another chapter of countless disappointments and pain in their franchise history. For the other, despite all the controversy, it still remains as the ultimate crowning moment.